There's two reasons I want to show you guys the police body cam response video. Not only to give you a better idea of how the police responded to this specific shooting, but I also want to give you an idea of how police should respond during a school shooting. Okay, so yesterday on Monday, just before 10 a.m., there was a shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. So this shooting has now grabbed national headlines. It's become extremely partisan politically. It's being used in some circles to push pretty hateful messages and also being used to push disinformation. And so I think the first thing I want to do before anything else is just go through the bare bones facts of what occurred, what was the timeline, go into possible motives that have been noted, any other important bare bones information before going into the reaction and then giving larger conclusions. We also have some footage of some of the body cam footage from first responders, from police officers who were first on the scene and were able to neutralize the shooter. So let's first, before anything else, go through the timeline. Okay. Just before 10 a.m. Monday, the shooter sent an anonymous message. Now, the shooter is a 28-year-old trans man by the name of Audrey Hale. Them being a trans man, as of right now, that is not really important. I still have yet to see any evidence that makes it important in relation to the shooting. The police have yet to show any evidence that makes it important in relation to the shooting. That can change in the near future. The idea that like there was possible ideological motivations behind Christianity and its historic, the Christian church in the United States, historic discrimination against trans people, that has yet to be substantiated. Now, it could be substantiated in the future, but the police chief has said that they have yet to find a motivation for the crime. But the only reason I'm really noting this is to be upfront about the conversation that's happening around this, to make sure that we are able to respond to the later messages from some people where they're trying to push a pretty strong partisan message around this before all the facts are even on the ground. The reason they're doing that, of course, is that if they wait a few days, then they're not going to be able to scrape every single bit of political capital out of this event if they were to wait for all the facts to come out. And so that's why Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk, immediately as the carcasses hit the floor, started scraping away for their table, started scraping away the scraps for their political leanings. Anyway, let's continue. Just before 10 a.m. Monday, the shooter, Aubrey Hale, sent an anonymous message to a childhood friend. The friend told CNN on Tuesday in an Instagram message to Envrin Patton, a Nashville radio host, just before 10 a.m. Monday, the shooter said, "I'm planning to die today," and that it would be on the news. "One day, this will make more sense," Hale wrote. "I've left more than enough evidence behind, but something bad is about to happen." Patton told CNN's Don Lemon she was the shooter's childhood basketball teammate and knew her well when we were kids, but hadn't spoken in years and is unsure why she received the message. Disturbed by its content, she called a suicide prevention line in the Nashville Davidson Sons County Sheriff's Office at 10:13 a.m. At that very minute, police in Nashville also got a 911 call of an active shooter inside the Covenant School and rushed there. Here's a picture of Aubrey Hale in the school walking around the halls with firearms. Armed with 3 firearms, later more firearms would be found at the home, including a sawed-off shotgun. This person had an arsenal of weapons, which police say were all also obtained legally. Their parents said that they were not too comfortable with Aubrey having these weapons, but they're 28, grown adult. You know, they have a constitutional right to have firearms. There was nobody to stop them. And so they had this arsenal of weapons completely legally. Armed with these, with 3 firearms, the shooter got into the school by firing through glass doors and climbing through to get inside. Surveillance video released by Metro Nashville police shows. Pointing an assault-style weapon, the shooter walked through the school's hallways, the video shows. As the first 5 officers arrived, they heard gunfire from the second floor. The shooter was firing through a window at arriving police cars. Police went upstairs where 2 officers opened fire, killing the shooter at 10:27 a.m. After the shooter was dead, children were evacuated from the school and taken in buses to be reunited with their families. They held hands and walked in a line out of the school, where community members embraced. The school prepared for this with active shooter training for a reason. Nashville Metropolitan Councilman Russ Pulley told CNN, "We don't like to think this is ever going to happen to us, but experience has taught us that we need to be prepared because in this day and time, it is the reality of where we are." Patton, meanwhile, had called Nashville's non-emergency line at 10:14 a.m. It was on hold for nearly 7 minutes before speaking with someone who said that they would send an officer to my home. She told CNN affiliate WTVF. An officer did not come to her home until about 3:30 p.m. 3 children and 3 adults were killed. 3 children, all being of the age of 9, all of them students. Their names are Evelyn Dick, I really don't want to pronounce their name wrong. Evelyn Dickhouse, Haley Scruggs, and William Keeney. They were all 9 years old. And the 3 adults that were killed were all faculty members, including Cynthia Peak, Catherine Kuntz, and Mike Hill, all age in their 60s. This is the bare bone facts. I do think that it would probably be useful to look at the police response video, because while there's not a lot we can glean from this shooting when it comes to ideological motivations yet, everything is not really concrete. There is a manifesto, which we're going to talk about in a second, but we haven't been told much about this manifesto, if it had an ideological slant to it. And I also think there is something to be accounted for when we talk about the other targets that the shooter was considering when talking about their ideological motivations. But I want to show you guys the police body cam response video. And there's 2 reasons I want to show you guys the police body cam response video. Not only to give you a better idea of how the police responded to this specific shooting, but I also want to give you an idea of how police should respond during a school shooting. Now, obviously, we're going to cut off before the shooter gets shot and killed. And the reason why is we're on Twitch and we got to abide by Twitch TOS. You can find the footage yourself if you really need to see that moment for any particular reason. I don't think it's not that incredible. It all happens at an incredibly far off distance. So you're not going to get much out of it, but if you want to, you can. But the main reason I'm going to be showing this on stream is I remember watching the entirety of the Uvalde surveillance and body cam footage, all of the stuff that was made available due to the hard work of reporters, how long it took. I mean, it was like an hour and a half, an unbelievably long amount of time before they eventually went into the area where children were still bleeding to death, disabled the shooter, killed the shooter, and evacuated the rest of the children, many of whom died due to their poor response. It's part of the reason why Uvalde was such a deadly mass shooting, was because of the poor police response. Now, compare that, which was over an hour, and over almost like an hour and a half, and a ridiculous period of time to be waiting for the police to respond, to the 3 to 4 minutes it takes before this cop gets out of his car for him to go in and disable the gunman. Watch.
Just got an update. It's going to be first floor, main lobby of what?
I'm making entry on the front side. I got a civilian that's coming in here.
The kids are all locked down, but we have 2 kids that we don't know where they are.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Into my window, they're upstairs.
Hey. Give me 3. Let's get 3.
So he's calling for 3 officers to get in. Now compare again. I hate to compare and contrast police response when it comes to these shootings, but after Uvalde, I feel inclined to. He's calling for 3 officers himself. There's 1 cop there. He's going to get another, and then they're going to go into the building. Many of these officers, by the way, were already fired upon by Arbery Hale out of the window as they were approaching already. And so they've already been under gunfire as well. and they're about to go in with just 3 officers. Now, remember, when we compare to Uvalde, they had like 20 officers and like full like shields and like helmets and like an unbelievable amount of gear in that hour and a half time it took for them to finally get in there and do the job. They're about to do it with 3 cops and no shields.
You guys can sit all the way down this hall. They said it's Fellowship Hall. The end of this hall is Fellowship Hall. They just said they heard gunshots down there, and then upstairs are a bunch of kids.
Let's go. I need 3. One more. Let's go.
Now remember, one of the things about Uvalde, they said took them so long was getting the key. They got the key already. They're going in.
Metro Police. Open door. On me, on me. We don't know where he is. Metro Police, open door. Bathroom, small bathroom. Clear. Next, let's go. Door, with me. Hold the door. Next. Check this. Open it, I got it. Bathroom. Let's go. Come now. Let's go right now. Let's go. Just move right. Hover left. Take this with me. Take this. No, that's locked. Take this door.
Another reminder that they knew where the Uvalde shooter was for a very long period of time before engaging. These cops are literally just going room to room, just 3 of them. Many of them checking different rooms at different times. I mean, they're trying to go as fast as possible here.
Take this door.
Which by the way, is protocol. That's what makes Uvalde such a disgusting incident when it comes to how the police responded, because they responded like it was a barricaded shooter where nobody's life was at risk when there was children in there bleeding out and dying.
It's upstairs. It sounds like it's upstairs. Go.
So those are shots for anybody who wasn't able to identify them. Shots are being currently fired. They have started to engage the shooter. Wow, now there's a lot more cops in the building. Okay. Got it. So it was 3 from one entrance. They got more cops in the building.
Push the LPB up.
Now, this right here, it's kind of hard to see, but you can vaguely see the outline of the figure in the distance here. This person, the cop you see, makes the shot, kills the shooter, and disables them. They then approach them, check their body. They tell them to like, stop moving, and it's over. Shooter's already been riddled with bullets, dead, and this was the police response. Now, I know it might be aggravating for me to go through this footage because it's very scary to see, a cop with a gun having to go through a school for elementary children with firearms, but this took 3 minutes and 24 seconds. 3 minutes and 24 seconds for this cop to get there, get to the door, and then advance into the building and disable the shooter. 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Unbelievably incomparable to Uvalde. This is exactly how the response in Uvalde should have been. And I remember some people tried to defend the police at the time, saying, well, of course but this was a dangerous job, dangerous mission. They wanted to make sure they had every safety precaution. They took so long that they started to prioritize the lives of every single officer, making sure like almost none of them even get injured over the children that were bleeding to death, when it is their job to protect and serve. This is how our police response should look like. It was fast. When they got shot at, they didn't just cower away. They then prepared as much as they could and went in and disabled the shooter as fast as possible by prioritizing the lives of others in the area. They didn't fire around recklessly. The shooter themselves did fire around recklessly. Reports say that they weren't targeting anybody in specific. They were just kind of like shooting at whatever they could, while the officers went in and disabled the threat. So I can't do anything here but say that the police response here was good. I'm happy they were able to disable the shooter and save as many lives as they could considering the situation. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, I want to talk about possible ideological motive, because wait, is that a Thrasher sticker on the back of the okay, I'm sorry. I got this. I don't know why that took my eye. I want to talk about possible ideological motive, because at this point, police officers say they don't know the motivations. People can assume motivations. There's like maybe some hints here or there, but then there's some other information that makes you double think. But the police are saying at this time that they do not know the motivations, or if they do, they have yet to make that information public. Now, what we do have is something that has been identified as basically like a manifesto. Material that was written by Hale before the shooting. Not only did they find a manifesto, but they also found out some information about the shooting. The fact that Audrey Hale had planned the shooting. And when I say planned the shooting, I mean mapped out the building. They looked at the amount of security that was going to be in the school. In fact, it looks like they were also considering possibly killing family members, or in another scenario, attacking a mall. And the reason they didn't end up attacking the mall is because they didn't have any, it seemed to be because of like high levels of security. And so they chose the school due to the fact that they thought it would be easier to attack the vulnerable. Really disgusting, vile behavior. But when it comes to ideological motive, again, we don't know anything yet. All we know is that there could be possible resentment towards the school. That's all we've been told by those who, have gotten these documents, looked through documents, and there's possible resentment towards the former school. Now, I do not know what could motivate somebody who's 28 years of age to have resentment towards this school to such a degree when they're 28. I mean, what, like 20 years later? 20 years, 18, 17 years later, to go to the school and murder children that they've never even met, faculty, staff that probably have changed since they went to the school. I think the obvious conclusion is somebody being deeply unwell, just like anybody who would consider shooting up a mall, like this person also did, would be deeply unwell. But saying a mass shooter has mental illness or is deeply unwell is not a new conclusion, and not a brand new idea, especially when we're talking about like when somebody goes out and does a mass shooting at some club or some location for ideological motive. I think it's sometimes it can be a lot more clear, a lot more early on. Whereas shooting up a school with children, I think a lot of times takes a little bit more digging due to the fact that a lot of times that could be more tied to bullying or personal experiences that they had at that school. And a lot of times you're not gonna find some manifesto about communism or fascism or something like that. Again, we don't have any idea what the ideology that could have motivated this person is yet. The cops are saying that they don't have motivation yet. But all we know is that from the documents that they have gone through, that it could have been motivated by possible resentment towards the school. I don't know where that resentment could be from, whether it was from a discipline going wrong. Of course, some people are saying, oh, is it because of the Christianity of the school and the Christianity being discriminatory towards their trans identity, leading to them going to a trans rage and did it? All you're doing is making assumptions about what ended up killing 6 innocent people. And I don't want to do that. I have no interest in doing that. I think it would be irresponsible for people to wait and see what conclusions come with time. It's not going to kill you to wait 24, 48, 72 hours. It's not going to kill you. It isn't. And I see people in chat right now, some of the conservatives in my community, I don't have many, but I have a few, saying, this motivated, it was transgenderism and hatred towards Christians. I am seeing the same exact names in my chat saying that right now, as I saw the same exact names in a different scenario when it was a different shooting, and I said, hey, let's wait, while other people saying this was obviously a right-wing shooter. This was obviously some racist. This was obviously some homophobe. We know for sure that was the case. Come on, Dylan, who else could it be? What else could it possibly be? And I said, no, we have to wait we got to wait for more time. We got to wait for more information to come out. And those same people who were yelling at those chatters, saying that's disgusting that you would use their body so quickly. Oh my God, that's terrible. It's disgusting that you would jump to these conclusions without evidence. And you see those same people right now doing that same thing because now they have an opportunity to do it. You want to know what? I got an example of this happening. I do have an example of this happening. Where is it? Oh yeah, here it is. Matt Walsh. I have been telling you for a long time that left-wing trans extremists are violent, dangerous people who have been made, I think he meant to say been made, to feel absolutely entitled to say and do whatever they want. The deranged claims of genocide are an open invitation to violence. It will get worse from here. Trans activists believe that those who oppose them should die. Wow, I didn't know all of them were just ISIS. Okay. I know this because a great many of them have told me this. Oh yes, Matt Walsh, unbiased source on the views of all trans people. They have communicated the message to me and my family in many ways. They think their right to affirmation supersedes your right to live. My goodness, what a powerful, passionate statement from Matt Walsh. Wow, really, really gripping. I want to show you this other statement, though, from about 4 or 5 years ago. If you have the inclination to immediately, within seconds, politicize mass killings and use them for your own benefit, you should be very concerned about your psychological and spiritual state. It reveals a serious lack of empathy. You are a sick person, and I mean that sincerely. Well, it was a different person that maybe made his side look worse that committed the shooting in this instance. So what does he do then? Oh, no. Everybody be quiet. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. But within 24 hours of a shooting in Nashville, Tennessee, where the cops say they don't know the motive yet, he already knows the motive. And he's going to use it to say that every trans activist wants you dead, thinks you should die if you don't believe in their affirmation. He can make that conclusion based off, he can make the conclusion the police can't. Apparently, Matt Walsh has access to information the police doesn't. Absolutely spectacular. Not the only time he said something similar to this, by the way. If you think, well, that's 5 years ago, maybe he's changed his mind. Here's from a year ago, actually less than a year ago. Really not in the mood to hear hot takes about the mass slaughter of elementary school children. Save that shit, please. Try to at least pretend you have a soul. Wow, very interesting. Very consistent from Mr. Matt Walsh. I also want to point out that Charlie Kirk has been just going on and on and on with messages like this all day and all day yesterday, to be honest. Unfortunately, what happened yesterday fits a trend. The nastiest, most vile people in America are part of the alphabet mafia. They call for violence and want revenge against people who oppose their agenda. He just described the LGBTQ plus community how I hear people describe al-Nusra. He just described gay people as some people would describe like suicide bombers. He's saying the nastiest, most vile people are in the LGBTQ plus community. Now, the thing that interests me about this is if I really think about the mass shootings in the United States, and there's been a lot of them, too many to name and count, to be quite honest. I think of the most prominent ones. I think the ones that killed the most people. I think about the ones that come to mind. I can only think of, I think, 2, maybe 3, where the person involved was not cis, was like actually trans or non-binary. I can't think of any more than that. And when we think of the amount of shootings that are done by, and I mean, I hate to pull this card as a member of the straight white community, but straight white cis guys, that heavily outweighs the amount of people who have done it in the trans community. It's not even close. They are the vast majority of these instances. In fact, I believe when it comes to school shootings, men, white men particularly, way outweigh other groups of people who could commit these acts. Like if you were to compare it to, I don't know, like the Asian population, it's not comparable. It's not. Now, does this mean I should get up and say the whites are some of the nastiest people, the most nastiest, most vile people in America are the whites, are people in the white community, are people in X community, are people who are part of this racial group, people who are part of, who are this gender, who are that class. All that is just drumming up hatred. It's not even like, hey, I care about the response here. I care about the people who died. It's just drumming up hatred. I don't think Charlie Kirk really cares that much about the people who died if his response to a shooting is to just attack gays. That's his response to this. He sees 3 kids die, 3 adults die, and his response, his thing that he thinks is going to improve the situation so less people die in shootings is going to just be attack the gays. Just attack the gays. Just go after the gays. Just go after the gays. The harder you go after the gays, the better. That's his solution to the scenario. How does that fix anything? How does that fix anything? How does that help anyone? How does this knuckle-dragging moron think this contributes at all toward solving the problems that led to this? You know, I hear from Charlie Kirk, I hear from people like Matt Walsh that they don't want gun control. And you know what? I'm pretty pro-gun myself. You know, I do believe in things like red flag laws, but I don't believe in things like banning AR-15s, right? Maybe that's considered very pro-gun. I don't know. But in certain Democrat circles, that would definitely be considered an unwelcome position. So I sympathize with the idea that we can just solve all these problems by banning guns. I don't really agree with that. But when we talk about the actual solutions of, for example, mental health care, which is the main thing I'll hear after shootings, is mental health care. This person was mentally unwell. We need to do something about the mental health crisis, about the lonely men, about this, about X, about Y, about Z. And then we propose investments into mental health services for people who are mentally unwell. And let me just say, if you go and shoot up a elementary school, you are mentally unwell. Then what happens? All of a sudden, the pockets dry up. All of that talk of finding another response to the mass shooting crisis we have in this country goes away because it was just a device to divert from gun control. That's all talking about mental health was. It was just a device to divert from gun control, because the idea we would actually have to make a public investment to dealing with this crisis, like investing into mental health care, public health care, that's possibly in some circles scarier than even the gun control. Anyway, all I have to say about this is a tragedy. I wish nothing but happiness for the children's families. I wish nothing but suffering, eternal life to be destroyed. Not eternal life in heaven, but the most darkest part of hell for anybody posting images like this, which is just disinformation. This is just fake. The person whose room this is follows me on Twitter. Of course they follow me on Twitter. You look at those flags, of course. But this is just fake. I just see so many people spreading misinformation about this shooting. either for their own shits or giggles, or to just make it like, haha, you know who's also at fault here? The socialists. Oh, you know who's also at fault here? The bisexuals, the gays. The NATO is at fault here. They say NAFO here. They said it was a NAFO flag. Is that what that is now? Is NAFO just NATO now? NATO is now less famous than NAFO? Where people see a NATO flag and they say that's a NAFO flag? Is that where we are now? My goodness. All I'm going to say for anybody consuming information about this is please get your information about this from a trusted source. Don't accept what Twitter is saying just randomly, because there's so many people talking in these threads that are just lying out of their asshole, talking about making conclusions that cannot be made based upon the information that is currently available. Until we have more information about the ideology of the shooter, I think having a conversation about what motivated this is a little difficult. Until we see the manifesto put out that says, like, I did this for X, Y, and Z reason, we should not be making assumptions, because people do this. People do this every time a shooting happens, and there's always a group of people after a shooting happens that find their pants around their legs. They embarrass themselves in front of everybody because they jumped to conclusions that ended up ultimately being wrong. Either because they read something on Twitter, they saw something on a thread, or they just wanted to, with the deepest of their soul, want the killer to be from the opposition. So until then, we have to wait. Also, I do want to say one last thing about this shooting before we move on. And that is this person, this podcast, the PDB podcast, I think it's called the PBD podcast. They were talking about Joe Biden's response to the shooting, and it kind of peeved me a little bit. Let's listen to it.
No, automatically the government's going to say, up, everybody, guns, give me your guns, give me your guns. It was actually quite embarrassing yesterday. Joe Biden spoke, and the shooting already happened. You know what he came downstairs and said in the White House?
Pull this up on what he said, because it's a little bit uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Should I preface it, Pat?
Yeah, go for it.
He comes downstairs, Pat, and he's joking. I get it, guys. He has dementia. He's out there. He starts talking about ice cream and how he loves ice cream and how they have ice cream upstairs, and then he sees 4 kids and he's like, look at how beautiful these kids are. Make them stand up. It's like, what? How tone deaf do you have to be?
This is right after the shooting.
Yeah. He goes, go back. He goes, my name is Joe Biden.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband.
6 people just died.
She's not a doctor.
And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream.
Look at this. Ridiculous.
By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs.
Yeah, and then what about the one? And then he spots 4 kids in the back, and he's like, "Look, whose beautiful kids are those?"
Vinny, was this for him to talk about the shooting?
He's supposed to be talking about the shooting because it happened. Regardless of what he addresses it later on, Pat. But
dude, I love that explanation. I'm sorry. All of that immediately crashes upon that explanation. So was he supposed to be talking about the shooting? Well, yes, because it happened. Okay, so for those of you who are curious, Biden is at an event that was pre-scheduled that is completely unrelated to Nashville, to Tennessee, or to the shooting in any way, or even to gun violence. And so he was at a pre-scheduled event talking to people, and he was socializing, and he cracked a few jokes. I couldn't care less. I couldn't imagine caring. Like, this is what you care about? I would understand if he didn't say anything about it and just the whole day just treated it in a nonchalant, like, whatever way. But Joe Biden is the president of the United States. Every day, tragedies happen in the United States. People getting shot up, people overdosing, drunk driving accidents. I just posted about a TikToker getting killed in a drunk driving accident. Do I need to assume that until Biden responds, he doesn't truly care about the drunk driving crisis? And the thing is, in this instance, he did what he should do. He did respond. Here was Joe Biden's response later, or at least part of his response later.
I just want to speak very briefly about the school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. It's sick. We're still gathering the facts of what happened and why. And we do know that as of Now, there are a number of people who did not make it, including children. It's heartbreaking, a family's worst nightmare. And I want to commend the police who responded incredibly swiftly, within minutes, and the danger. And we have to do more to stop gun violence. It's ripping our communities apart, ripping the soul of this nation, ripping at the very soul of the nation. We have to do more to protect our schools so they aren't turned into prisons. You know, the shooter in this situation reportedly had 2 assault weapons and a pistol. So I call on Congress again to pass my assault weapons ban. It's about time that we begin to make some more progress.
Now, he can be angry that Biden used this to, try to advance an assault weapons ban. Okay, he can be like, how dare you try to ban my assault weapons or whatever. He can complain about that, but don't complain that Biden didn't take this event. He didn't give it a full response, or he just was joking about it and nothing else, or he didn't care. He responded here. He clearly responded here. It's just he was at a pre-scheduled event. They put up the ticker. It has the news that's going on over the pre-scheduled event. Fox News does it. So you see the ticker saying all these people dead while he's talking at this already pre-scheduled event that's about a totally separate thing, and now outrage clip, outrage bait for the right. It's quite silly, man. It is quite silly. Not to mention, like, Joe Biden probably made a statement where they could be more outraged around the shooting. What was that thing he said to Josh Hawley? Does anybody have the clip, have the moment? Maybe I can pull it up. Yeah, here it is. Let me bring it up. This is the thing I would actually expect to get like an angry response from people, even if I would still say, it's Biden being Biden. This is the next day. This is the day after he's already responded, after he gave his formal response. Asked to respond to GOP Senator Josh Hawley's claim he believes Christians were targeted in Monday's school shooting in Nashville, Biden tells reporters at the White House, well, I probably don't then, before clarifying, no, I'm joking. I have no idea. So I've said this before, and I've said it, and I'll say it again. I once said that Joe Biden would make an excellent streamer, and this is more evidence to that. The edgy jokes, the ability to get himself canceled, the entertainment value, all of it, top tier, make a great streamer, would be streaming with XQC in a week.